Starting to set up.
It's never been adjudicated.
Tim will talk for about 20 minutes. We have a very good crowd.
Producers and corporations simply pay money, whether it's true or not.
Friends of Maple Grove Cemetery. You're in our celebration hall of Maple Grove, and it's named Celebration Hall for the celebration of life both past and present. Carved in stone on the first floor, there's an ancient 3,000-year-old Egyptian proverb. If you speak the name of the dead, they will come back to life. Well, we certainly do not bring the dead back to life here. But what we do bring is we do bring back their life story, back to a new generation to understand and to appreciate. Today we speak the name George Washington Johnson. We come to remember and celebrate his life. He rose from the birth as a slave in Virginia to becoming the first African-American recording superstar of the phonograph and the early recording industry. This year, 2014, we marked the 100th anniversary of his death in 1914. His grave was devoid of his name and marker for 100 years. And we rectified that with the unveiling today of a worthy monument to him. I'm delighted by the presence of so many people who have come here today. I congratulate...
I know the students from Aquinas wrote the text for the plaque, so before you had that project, and for the rest of you, before you heard of today's ceremony, how many of you had heard of George W. Johnson? I know a few of you did. Okay, half a dozen maybe. You're way ahead of the American population, believe me. Johnson, who was very well known in his day, has gone through a long period of being totally written out of history. Even histories of the recording industry, even histories of black culture, you can look in all kinds of references, you won't find a mention of him. If you do find a mention of him, it'll probably be wrong. But he was a genuine first. He was very successful in his day. This slide. Specifically, he was the first African-American to record commercially when the business started, essentially, in 1890. He was not only the first, he was a major star of that period, to the extent they had stars. And he proved, and this is something that may be a little hard for us to understand today, he proved that there was a place, in fact, for African-Americans in the recording industry, something that was not all clear. As I said, he had two familiar songs, one a laughing song and the other a whistling song. Laughing songs were a type of song that were popular at the time in which essentially the singer laughs in time with the music, which may sound kind of silly and ridiculous, although I suspect 50 years from now people will think what we're listening to is silly and ridiculous. But on this magical new device called a phonograph, to hear somebody laughing along with the music kind of incites you to kind of chuckle and smile too. And that's the effect that his records had. So here's a little bit. Oh, and the other thing I want you to notice is that most performances, both on the stage and on the early records at that day, were very formal, rather, what do we call them, stilted. They were right from the music, they were note by note, there was great emphasis placed on proper pronunciation and singing things just the way they were written. Johnson wasn't like that. He slurred his words, he laughed along with the music. He was very loose and limber, and in those days that really stood out. It just sounded like nothing people had heard before. And at the same time, he was able to do it in a way that as you were listening carefully to these things, you could hear what he was saying. It wasn't unintelligible at all. So here's a little bit of Johnson's laughing song. this is a somewhat later one. I didn't want to bring a brown wax one that would fall apart, but this is what things were recorded on with these little cylinders. So each of those machines had a wax cylinder on it. He would sing his song, and the company would get 4 copies to sell. Then he would sing his song again, and they'd get 4 more copies, or maybe 3 if I'm and so forth. And he would go all afternoon singing that song over and over and over again to build up stock, to sell, basically. All records were original records. Try that with Jay-Z or somebody doing this over and over again to build up stock to sell. Since the horns weren't very sensitive, they had to put the piano up on a riser here, so the soundboard of the piano that you heard there is right behind his head. So the piano is banging right behind his head. He's singing as loud as he can, still trying to make it loose a number. And we've only got up to a dozen copies. George, keep going. Every time he would sing it, another 20 cents. Sing it again, another 20 cents. So if he worked all afternoon, he might make $5. A lot of money. And Spencer, his good friend Len Spencer, who you saw before, are both performing a skit. And you actually hear Johnson speaking on this, trading jokes back and forth with Len Spencer. So a little bit of the Merry Melody. There was a lot of affection for him in the record industry, as we saw before. Even in this time of great racial segregation and the color line and barring black from so many lines of work, he was well regarded. And this is a picture of him at the Edison, Thomas A. Edison's estate in New Jersey in 1900. He's on the right-hand side there. There are about 40 people there. These are all Edison recording artists. And he's the only African-American in the whole group, as you can see. There are very few women as well. So you can kind of see what the record industry looked like at that time. He was really exceptional in the fact that he was part of this group, and as I said, beloved by so many of them. Didn't say Maple Grove. But it looked by location that it might be here. So I called here. This was in the early 90s. And they told me, they were nice, they told me on the phone there was no record of him in the system here. So I looked at other cemeteries, and I couldn't find him there either. But it didn't seem right. So I came back, and I came to the administration building and asked them, and again, they went on the computer, couldn't find him. But they said, oh, you know, there's some old books in back, ledgers. We'll look there for you, and that's where we found him.
So this is you in this article that I found?
Very distinguished Broadway and television actor who will channel the spirit of George Washington Johnson. He starred in so much: The Color Purple, Porgy and Bess, Hair, Jesus Christ Superstar, Two Joan of Verona, The Threepenny Opera with Sting, and on June 23rd at Carnegie Hall, he'll be starring with Black Stars of the Great White Way with Ben Vereen, Denzel Washington, Norm Lewis, Andre DeShields. His name is Larry Marshall.
My name is George Washington Johnson. And since you know so much about me now, I might as well go on back to the grave. Nah, just kidding. Like the man said, I became the first African American recording star in the United States. Now, I was born into slavery, you see. And eventually I made my way to New York City in the 1870s. And I made a living as a street entertainer and singing on the ferry boats. Now, I had a strong voice and powerful lungs, and well, you know, and I could whistle any tune you ever wanted to hear. That's right. Now, in 1877, Thomas Edison conceived the idea of recording sound. Now, the first apparatus was tin foil with wax cylinders, and it was crude and it was hard to capture the sounds of the piano, violins, and even women singing. It seemed like the way to go was having strong brass instruments and, of all things, whistling, which was my forte. Now, I was hired by a New York phonograph company and the New Jersey phonograph company to record a whistling song. See, and I had to sing that song over and over and over again, and I was paid 20 cents every time I sang it. Yeah, you see, the reason why is because duplication couldn't be made at that time, and the record companies needed as many copies as they could get, so I sang it over and over and over again. Now, I also wrote and sang a song called The Laughing Song, and it became a hit in the 1890s. That's right. And in fact, I have been told that between 1890 and 1895, it's been estimated that I sold over 23 to 50,000 copies. And my picture was on the cover of all of the music sheets that I sold. And I became...
So now we're heading down to the Black Burial Ground and to the monument to Mr. Johnson.
American Burial Ground, and interred here are 300 congregants of the Shiloh First Colored Presbyterian Church of New York City, founded in 1822 by Reverend Samuel Cornish, who went on to found the first African-American newspaper, Freeman's Journal. Okay, so what we're going to do is unveil. George Washington is getting a plaque after 100 years. So if you would, yeah, where's my Aquinas kids? Where's Clyde? Yeah, it's a lot, it's a long one, so you're going to have to pull it. Here we go, keep going, keep going, keep going. There.